All right, everyone, welcome back to another Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes video with Fat Phil, and today we are in Resource Management 102 talking about mods, particularly when to keep, when to sell, and how to identify your mod needs. This is a topic, this is a conversation that comes up quite a bit, and I think you just have to recognize kind of how it flows together and how it works, right? It's not always the easiest of things, but it is a important part of the game. And there are some, ways to identify this. It's not just use hot utils. Like there's ways to do this. So with that said, let's give a huge shout to our channel members, as always, for their continued support. If you guys are ever interested in joining those, that link is down below, along with a link to our Discord server. Go check it out. Really just appreciate these folks. They've been with me. Some of them have been with me since the beginning. You guys are awesome. Really appreciate everything. I am, humbled, blessed, and honored to be able to bring you Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes content. So let's get in here, folks, and let's talk about mod management Resource Management 102, managing your mods, knowing when to keep and sell. All right, so the first thing you need to do when you're looking at this is you have to develop a baseline for your account. You need to look at the mods in your account and develop a baseline. And when you're developing this baseline, make sure you take your full account into effect. You don't just want to take your top offense characters or whatever stat, mod you're looking at. You've got to take the full account into perspective, because you don't get better mods just by replacing the best ones in your account. You get better mods by just replacing everybody's, right? You want everybody to have good mods, and that means taking the full account into consideration. Now, how you develop a baseline is you're going to look by shape, by set, by primary, and by the secondaries. You've got to take every little thing into consideration. Now, that sounds like a daunting task, and it absolutely can be. But you're not going to do it all at once. I don't want you to spend the next month developing a baseline for every single situation. What you really do is you look and say, okay, what I kind of would recommend doing is, if you're looking at your mods and you're like, hey, I'm going to go to the mod store, and I can see this mod right here. So a health multiplexer, it's a cross with a speed on the secondary, and then potency. Now, I don't know what the other two secondary stats are. So would this mod benefit me? Well, I can take a look. So what I will do is I'll go into my account, click, show mods, and I'll just go to my, health crosses with a speed secondary. So we're going to click there, and we're going to sort by speed. So now, you don't want to look and say, if it's not 27 speed, it doesn't help me. If it's not 23 speed, it doesn't help me. If it's not, 15 speed, it doesn't help. Let's pump the brakes a little bit, because we've got mods that exist below that. So the first area that you'd look is down at the lowest level 6 dot mod I have is 9 speed. However, there's some decent secondary stats there. We've got protection percent, we've got offense. That's a pretty decent mod. Similar situation here, similar situation here. And so when you look at all these mods that are, 9 or 10 speed, you can at least see that there's some secondary stats that are lucrative to me, that are ones that I would want on my account. So the first two mods that I would use to say, okay, where could this really benefit me, is one like Shorty and one like Snap, where it's 11 speed and it's 13 speed. So not the greatest of speed rolls per se, and neither of them really have stats that are going to be knocking my socks off. So now that's my baseline. Is this, okay, it needs to at least be double-digit speed to even get considered, and it's got to have enough secondary stats that it's worth it, right? So I don't need to look at every single mod in my account to figure out if that one in the store, I just looked at it down on the level that it is. So for me, that mod would end up being a pass, simply because the resources I'd have to put into it, who knows, it could turn out to be really good. I know I don't have the mod slicing materials, but I'm gambling a little bit too much on the level, 3 and 6, giving me good mods, giving me good secondaries to begin with. And then I'm gambling that the stats or the speed get better than what I already have. And because I'm not certain of those things, it's not worth the risk, in my personal opinion. If this was a situation where it was a gold mod and it had all the stats available for me to look at, maybe it's a different conversation, but because it's not, I don't think it's worth the risk, right? This doesn't meet, for it to meet my baseline criteria, it needs to get some really good rolls that I just don't think will happen, so we're going to let it go. So that's kind of a quick and dirty how you develop a baseline, right? You just look at, okay, I looked at the shape, I looked at the set, the primary and the secondary. I'm not going to look at every single mod. I don't need to do that. I just want to look at the ones that would be replacing. You can obviously go more in detail to figure out if you could be switching some stuff around, but at that point, I think you're doing a little bit too much. Not saying that can't be beneficial. Not saying that maybe the better way to do this wouldn't be, all right, Phil, well, you should probably look at any characters that can go for, protection. Maybe you throw the speed set on there too, because you can switch mods around, and then where does it help you? But, at that point, you look at the number of mods I now have to analyze, it's a lot more. And not saying that there isn't some value here, but you could make a case that it gets significantly harder for that mod to be beneficial because I have so many at this 10, 11 speed range that have decent enough stats that are worth keeping. So that's, again, just how you would develop your baseline. That's the first step to managing your mods, is developing this baseline of knowing when to keep and sell. Come up with your baseline. At what point are your mods no longer going to benefit? Again, don't just use your best characters. Use some of these new ones. Hey, what needs do they have? What level would those, mods benefit the character, right? And again, by that specific, shape, set, secondaries, primaries, all that kind of stuff. Now, when you're analyzing and setting that baseline, the first thing you'll want to keep in mind is speed first. Speed is king, right? Speed has to be the number one priority. It's got to have speed on it. All of my tank mods, almost all of my tank mods, actually, you know what? I can say with confidence, I don't think I have a single mod in my inventory that doesn't have speed. A lot of my tank mods that have really good stats are that way because they didn't roll the speed. There's plenty of my mods that are super, super fast that have the potential to be really good mods for a tank and just did not because they rolled speed instead of defense percent or health percent. And a lot of my tank mods, and I can say all of my tank mods are there because it didn't roll speed, but rolled the defense or the health percent or whatever else. And that's kind of how I've built my inventory. But you've got to start with speed first and then worry about the other secondaries, because eventually you're going to say, okay, well, for me to replace, say, this mod on Dark Side Ray, I've got 16%, I've got a health mod, 20 speed, 5% offense. So if I just go to my health mods and say, okay, well, Phil, this one on Rex is faster. Sure. But it's only got tenacity where I've got offense percent here. So I'm not willing to, just give Ray more speed. I've got to worry about the secondary stats on it as well. But early on in the life cycle of your account, you're going to want to figure out what stats, you got to worry about the speed first, right? Obviously, I'm worrying about the speed first, and then I worried about the rest of the stats on the mod. So it took a while. Obviously, it takes a while to get there, but, you don't want to say, oh, I'm going to worry about the, secondary stat right away, because that's when you'll start missing some mods that are beneficial outside of that. Which, just as a side note here, when you're trying to find mods, what I oftentimes encourage players to do is, number one, if you're looking at a mod and you're not sure who it goes on in the store, right? If I'm in my mod store and you're looking at a mod and you're like, if I got, say, this mod here, which again, I wouldn't buy this anyway. I wish, like this one. Okay, here's a great example. This mod. Who would I put this on? Who would benefit from health and potency and speed? If I can't come up with a character, like right away I look at that, okay, old Daka could benefit from that mod. I could see somebody like maybe Jin Urso could maybe benefit from this, or who would be debuff heavy that also likes health. Ezra Bridger Exile maybe. JTR, you insert debuff heavy character here, right? So if you're looking at a mod though and you're like, I don't know who this would go on, it's not worth buying then. If you have to do mental gymnastics to figure out who that mod goes on, it's probably not worth buying, because you're shoehorning yourself that if this doesn't, if this doesn't roll the speed, or this doesn't roll this, I'm stuck with a mod that doesn't help me, right? Like this potency mod over here. If this doesn't roll speed, there's no extra potency to help this mod get better. So again, I wanted to make sure, I wanted to quickly just cover that, don't just get caught up by the speed when you're looking at those mods. Make sure you're asking yourself that question: who does this benefit if it doesn't roll these things? And if you're not sure, it's not worth buying. Now, I wanted to give a few examples of, setting baselines. So if you're somebody who's a light speed bundle warrior, you're probably just worried about getting speed. And I'm going to pause here for a second. We're going to go into, 2 accounts just to show what I mean. Where if you're somebody who's purchased a lot of light speed bundles, you shouldn't be worried about trying to get 20 speed on every single mod. You just need to get speed on your characters in general. You got to start with just, hey, 4 speed is enough. If I go down to the Great Ones account here, I was kind of going through his account and I clicked on it. I was like, man, this is perfect. So if I click on his cam, he's got, now this is not the right primary stat, but it's 5 speed. And this is exactly like, this is smart modding where he's just getting speed on the character. He doesn't have the time to slice it up yet, but he's got the speed. Doesn't matter if it's 7 speed or 5 speed. He's got speed. Where if you would go down, continue to look down to say Sith Empire Trooper, there's no mods. What mods would benefit here? Anything that has speed. Obviously, if he gets a 20 speed mod, it's not going on Sith Empire Trooper, but a 5 speed mod here is better than a 0 speed mod. So he can't be super choosy when he's trying to pick out mods, because he's just trying to get speed, and then he can worry about getting to that next threshold, right? When you've purchased, a light speed bundle, or you're just trying to mod characters for the first time, the biggest piece of advice I have at times is just get some speed and then worry about everything else later, right? Now, obviously, don't go in like, okay, I'm going to get a bunch of really crappy random mods, but you can see that, like, I really was impressed with this because it shows, the Great Ones, he's thinking the right way. He's got the speed, and everything else, he's going to let everything else sort itself out. Everything else will kind of fall into place. He's got the speed, and then he can come back and figure out where these mods eventually go when he's ready to slice them. So this was a good example. And, and I'm going to go into, I'm not trying to, crash on anybody, but I know with like Alley Gal and her baby account now, there's still a lot of characters where she doesn't have mods on them. Right? Of course, I picked the one character that does have mods. Maybe she's getting mods on. Maybe she's starting to get some mods on them. Like, oh, Snowtrooper, no mods. So if Allie was sitting there, and I'm not saying this was the case because she's not doing this, but if Allie was like, yeah, I'm selling mods that only have 3 speed because they're not valuable. Well, they'd be valuable in your Snowtrooper, right? And again, this is a hypothetical situation. That's not what she's doing, but I'm providing the example. I don't like when people set a certain speed threshold to say, if it's not 5 speed, sell it. 3 speed helps Snowtrooper, right? Like, we can all agree on that. So I try not to, when you're trying to set your baseline, don't come up with this hard, fast number that it has to be this speed or I'm selling it. Because if you just need mods, then any speed is helpful, regardless if it's 3 or, obviously if it's 31 speed, but you get the concept. For the speed is helpful. If I give Allie a 23 speed mod, she's going to put it on somebody. If I give her a 3 speed mod, she can put it on Wrecker. That's kind of sometimes I feel that logic gets lost on players where we get too hyper focused on getting a ton of speed. Just get speed and worry about the rest of it later. For some of you, it could be 7 speed. For others, it could be 11, right? It's going to depend on your account and your modding needs. But if you have a bunch of mods at 3 speed, 7 is an upgrade. Is 7 a great mod roll? Absolutely not. But is it better than 3? Hell yeah. And same, similar situation with 11. One of the comments, this came from Exonix, this topic, where he's like, for example, Phil, is it worth keeping a mod that has 3 rolls at 11 speed comparative to a mod that has 2 rolls at 11 speed? They're both still 11 speed, right? Obviously, this one has the potential to get faster because it has 3 rolls left comparative to this one having 2 rolls left. But they're both still 11 speed. So until I make this mod faster, this mod is just as valuable, right? If you kind of think through it logically, in terms of me utilizing that mod, this mod is just as valuable as this one because their speed is the same. Once the speed changes on one of them, then value changes. But yes, this one has the potential to do better, but that potential could not pan out. Maybe I don't get any more speed on this mod, and maybe this one gets to 14 speed, so now it's definitely better. So I don't like setting the expectation of, if it's 3 rolls of 11 or 3 rolls of 10, listen, at the end of the day, what matters is that it's just, is it fast, right? Another example I could use here is on my Skiff Guard Lando, 4 rolls at 14 speed. Yes, it's not ideal, but it's still better than 3 rolls at 12 speed, even though this one has the potential to be faster. Right now, this one is. So, don't get yourself kind of shoehorned into this methodology of, the quality of rolls. That is an endgame player mentality. That is a piece of advice that I try to stay away from because I don't think it's accurate to the game. Now, eventually, as your account develops, as you grow your account, like I was kind of showing, your baseline isn't just going to be about the speed. It could start to be about offense percent or protection percent, or it could be about those other secondaries that it'll grow to more. That, for Allie and the Great One, their baseline is just speed right now. They just got to worry about getting speed. We can worry about everything else later. Let's just get some speed on the characters. We'll worry about the stats at a later time, right? In that mod farming phase, you think speed phase is the first phase. Then we start to worry about everything else, right? So in an offense percent situation, if you look at my Kyle Katarn, he's got 2% offense on his diamond and 10 speed. So for me to be able to replace this mod on Kyle, my baseline would be, all right, well, it's got to be 10 speed or faster, and it's got to have more offense. On Fennec, she's only got 1% offense, but 22 speed. So I need to make this mod, for my baseline for Fennec. And again, every character's different, but you get the concept there that, all right, it can't just be, you think for Kyle, I can't just say, faster than 10 speed is my threshold, because that's not going to help Fennec. But I can't say, 2% is my threshold, because then at that point, we got to have the speed to help Kyle. So you kind of combine the two of them, right? Another one would be like R2D2, 21 speed, another like 2% offense. Your baseline's kind of combined together to say, for me to replace this on him, I've got to get significantly better, offense or speed. So you're going to kind of combine those things into one to say, this is my baseline at that point. For mods to help me, they need to meet X criteria, and you kind of figure out, and that's where you can sometimes make a case where, if I'm looking at my offense diamonds, this one on Boomadier, 4% offense, but only 5 speed. So, you'd say, well, Phil, that's trash. Well, sure, I could get up to, this one on Canderous doesn't even have offense percent. I really should sell that mod. I probably will sell that mod. Or this one on Mission, okay, 10 speed, but it's only got, 0.4% offense. I slice this up, it maybe gets to, 0.85% or something. Like, this one's still better for him. The extra speed isn't as valuable as the extra offense on a character like this, or on Malicos, or, Snips, right? Now, on someone like I said, Fennec, that speed does begin to get a little bit more beneficial if I'm trying to counter Lord Vader, that I don't want her to be super slow and getting lapped all the time. So that's just, again, manage your baseline to ensure you have the right logic of what sacrifices you would or wouldn't be willing to make. The final thing, guys, as Reaganomics in modding, the trickle down approach. I mention this every time we talk about modding, so if you're still watching right now, trickle down approach in the comments. My entire modding journey has been based on this trickle down approach. I start with, okay, if I'm going to end up replacing this mod on Ezra because I get a better, I get 28 speed, then someone like Admiral Trench, this mod, Ezra's mod moves to Admiral Trench. Admiral Trench moves to Captain Enoch. Captain Enoch's mod moves to, say, Coruscant Underworld Police or somebody, right? And I've trickled down. I've got better mod, and I've, taken that chance. And then even characters like the Armorer here, I've got an 18 speed, square on her. I've been kind of saving this. I might need to put this on somebody eventually. But what I can do is keep this on her knowing, hey, if I need to replace it, I can. And then I'll go and slice it when I have the materials. But for now, it's sitting on her because it's just not as valuable to me because it's not a 6-stop mod. So, I try to use this trickle down approach to make a case, make an argument that what you want to be doing with your account is you want to be taking those mods from, the top down. You want your entire roster to get better. If you wonder why I don't have to remod as much, it is because I've been trickling them down. So folks, that is the end of the video. I hope that helped. I hope that made sense. I hope this helps you manage your mods a little bit more of when to buy them and when to sell them and when to keep them, that you have this baseline in mind of when is it actually valuable to you. And that for a lot of you, you're probably still in that case where mods just in general are valuable because you can put them on somebody who doesn't need them. That's a really big part of this game, is just building mods. I can't tell you the amount of times that I had a mod, like say this one on Kylo or something, where it was just sitting on somebody and I took a chance on it and brought it up. They don't all happen this way, but there are plenty of mods that can kind of happen like this, where you just had it sitting on somebody, you happen to roll the speed, you happen to roll the offense, and all of a sudden it gets awesome. So that's the video, folks. Like, subscribe, comment. I love you all. May the force be with you, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers, my friends.